So recently I built a new PC and threw away my old one. And as a result of that whole project, I have a heap of computer parts left over, which I'd rather not leave laying around. I'm doing a project now to build a budget computer using spare parts and some things that I found off Facebook Marketplace. So everything that's going in the computer is in this box right here. I'm not using my old computer case because that thing had fallen apart over the years. So the first thing I have is my CPU cooler. This is the Corsair H105. This thing's been running in my computer since 2014, and it's never failed. It's been fantastic. Back in 2014, RGB was not a thing, but this does have a light up logo, which I think just lights up white, and it's got a red accent on it as well. Here is my motherboard, which has the CPU and memory still installed. This is a mini ITX motherboard. It's an ASUS ROG Impact. This is a model, again, from 2014. The CPU is a Devil's Canyon i7. It's a 4790K, so very old CPU, but it was the fastest CPU of its generation. These days, it's about equivalent to an i3 or something. Not even as good as an i3, but maybe an i3 from 2 years ago or something like that. But it's for gaming, which doesn't rely too much on CPU. It's fine, and the memory is 16 gigs of Corsair vengeance, but 16 gigs of 2400 megahertz DDR RAM. And it's a mini ITX motherboard, so you can see it's actually shorter than my glass here. It's very small. This is the Cryonaut Thermal Grizzly thermal paste, which I have some left over from my most recent computer build. Also donated from my old computer is this 750 watt power supply. This is the SilverStone, I think it's 50 plus gold rated. It's a really good power supply, and it's the newest part of my old computer because I did replace the power supply in that one kind of 2 or 3 years ago. It is a modular power supply. The only downside of these power supplies is the cables which they come with are quite ugly, and they're quite long. So although it's modular, by the time you plug everything in, you do have kind of like 6 or so cables coming out of this, and they're quite hard to cable manage unless you purchase the custom sleeve ones elsewhere. Next, I have some Corsair fans. So these are some fans which I actually purchased by accident. I thought I was purchasing WM light loop fans, but these are actually the SP models, which I was really shocked, but they're not PWM fans. They're just 3-pin fans. I didn't know 3-pin fans were even made anymore, especially by a manufacturer like Corsair, but they are RGB. RGB can be controlled through IQ. So, in terms of functionality and cooling, they're great. It's just that they'll run at full speed all the time. So, the computer will be a bit noisy in that regard. And they came with this controller, which is used for RGB control through the IQ software. So they'll definitely be going in. Next up, I have the graphics card. So this did not come from my old computer. This I purchased just this week. I wanted to keep the price around 150 if I could, and I actually got quite a good purchase. This is actually a 1070, GTX 1070, and I picked this up for $175 Australian off our Facebook Marketplace. The person who was selling it was upgrading, and they said this particular GPU does seem to have some heating problems. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but it was quite dusty, so I've completely disassembled this GTX 1070. I've given it a clean, and it's looking quite nice now. It actually looks quite new, and yeah, I'm keen to see how this performs. It's supposed to perform about the same or a bit better than a 980 Ti, which is a graphics card I actually used to own. And it's also about on par with a RTX 3050 graphics card, not the laptop version, but the actual desktop version, obviously without the ray tracing capability, but in terms of raster performance. Again, this arrived just today. So this is the Phanteks Eclipse P200A. I picked this up for a bargain. I think it was only $75 off of PC case gear with free delivery. So I thought that was fantastic for a computer case. It is a mini ITX build, and it's got a window, which is quite premium for, you know, a budget case. And it comes with 2 fans at the front, which I think are also RGB. And yeah, I think it looks quite nice for the price. And, you know, anyone who's building a budget computer out of budget parts like I have should be very happy with it looking as nice as this case. One thing I've done to get every, you know, out of the performance I can out of a budget gaming computer using secondhand parts is I've disassembled all of the parts and I've thoroughly cleaned them and removed all the dust. So, you know, when you're building a computer this kind of budget, which I would say is, you know, we're looking at, say, under $500 Australian here, you know, you want to do everything you can to get a little bit extra performance. So things like cleaning the hardware, overclocking the hardware as much as it can, you know, making sure the airflow inside the computer that you build is very well tuned. That will get you a little bit extra performance.
So that's it. I'm very happy how this build turned out for a budget system. After reviewing some benchmark results on Firestrike, 3D Mark's Firestrike, I was able to get a score of 14,800 initially. And then after some tuning and overclocking, I was able to get that score up to 15,700, which is almost a 1,000 point increase, which is very impressive for a budget system like this. For 1080p gaming, it should be quite capable at running games at 60 FPS. Maybe not always on the ultra settings, but medium settings, 60 FPS, 1080p, that kind of thing. I also checked online to see how much it would cost if you were to buy all these parts, or at least similar parts, from stock and build a system like this yourself. You'd be looking at somewhere around $650 Australian. This is not the exact same parts that I used. These are quite old parts, so they're not that easy to find, but they're around the same spec, if not better. In fact, this system which I spec'd out here would be probably 10%, 15% better than the one I've built. Another thing is I did run out of fan headers on the motherboard. It only actually has 3 chassis fan headers and 1 CPU fan header. So I purchased this fan splitter from Amazon, which splits 1 fan header into 3. And that seems to be working perfectly. It's doing exactly what I need. And I picked that up for only $5, including delivery, off Amazon Australia. Some of the challenges I had is the graphics card actually would not fit in the system with the default radiator fan configuration. I did have to front mount the radiator for the graphics card to fit, but that is the kind of trade-off you have to make when you're making a budget mini ITX build like this one. And finally, I added some stickers in the case which came with my motherboard. These are the ASUS ROG stickers. I think they're quite tasteful. I removed the default, kind of rating sticker that was placed on the power supply at the side here so that I could put some, nicer looking ASUS stickers there, which I think is a nice finishing touch for a budget system like this.